Okay, so let's start with an example. I'm just going to start with a very generic table. We're going to look at that table, we're going to decide whether or not it's proportional, and then we're going to graph it and take a look at what a graph of a proportional relationship looks like. Okay. All right, so let's take a look here. We haven't really seen a table yet with that input of 0, 0, okay? So what I want to tell you about finding out whether or not a table is proportional is you always skip this one. Because if you found the ratio here, it's actually undefined because you can't divide by 0. But it's good to know that if you see 0, 0 on a table, then it's likely, the chances of it being proportional are higher. And we'll see why when we look at the graph, okay? But now what we can do is we can go ahead and divide all these ratios to find out whether or not this is proportional. And if we do 5 divided by 2, we get 2.5. Okay. 10 divided by 2, 2.5. 10 divided by 4. 15 divided by 6 is also 2.5. Okay, so since all those ratios are equivalent, we can say that this table represents a proportional relationship. Everybody follow me so far? Yes, you guys are experts at that. Now let's take it to the next level. We're going to graph this, okay? As long as your table is about 8 by 8, you'll have enough space here. Or sorry, your graph, I mean. Okay, so this is my x-axis. This is my y-axis. It looks like my x's range from 0 to 6. So I'm going to go ahead and just go by a scale of 1 here on the bottom. Okay. Now my y values go all the way up to 15, and I do want to try to fit it on the same graph. So instead of going by 1s here, I'm going to go by 2s. So my scale for my y-axis is going to go by 2s. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to plot the points on the graph. So my first point, you can think of these as ordered pairs. X is 0, y is 0. So I'm going to put a point right here at 0, 0, the origin. Then your x is 2, your y is 5. And the 5 is like about halfway. The next here is 4 and 10. So 4 and 10. And then 6 and 15. Once you have plotted your points from your table onto your coordinate plane, you're going to connect them to make a line. You get to stay? Yeah. Nice. Okay. that we have this graph done, let's talk about the characteristics of a proportional relationship graph. Because we've already proven that this is proportional, so looking at the graph, there's a couple things I want to point out. The first thing is that this graph crosses here at the point 0, 0. The other thing I want to point out is this graph is linear. Meaning that it is a straight line. Okay. So what that means, and I'm going to create like a little note here, that proportional graphs, oh yeah, of course. Okay, so proportional graphs have two distinct characteristics. One, it crosses at 0, 0. Okay. And the second characteristic is it's linear. If it meets both of those criteria, we can say that the graph is proportional. The graph shows a proportional relationship. Okay, so I'm going to do quick sketches of a few graphs, and we'll decide whether or not they're proportional, okay? These are definitely not going to be like pieces of artwork. I'm just... Okay. Okay.
Yo, Miss Mac.
Purposely opened it really loud and hard so they jumped when I opened the door. It's great.
Hey, yo, Miss Mac.
I know. Okay, let's take a look at these three graphs. Is this first one proportional?
No.
Why? It's not linear. Good. Is this one proportional?
Yeah.
Yes. So that means we can see that it crosses at 0, 0, and it's linear, right? Okay. So let's put that down. Crosses at the origin 0, 0, and it's linear. Okay, good. What about this one?
No,
Why?
because it doesn't cross at 0, 0.
Great. So this one is no. Doesn't cross at the point 0, 0. Fabulous. Okay, good. All right. Now, I want to do one more example that's kind of similar to one that you have in your homework to prepare you for that. And so I'm out of room on this side because you need about about a half a page for the example. So if you don't have a half a page, flip it. Okay. Ooh, that helped. They all left my door alone now. It's a lot quieter.
Hey, no,
I think I scared him out of his boots a little bit. All right. So we're going to do an example about two guys named Jake and Bob.
Ooh, I love
Jake and Bob.
Jake and Bob.
Now, Jake and Bob are building birdhouses. In fact, they need to build 10 birdhouses. Okay, so they need to build 10 all together. So that means if Jake builds all 10, then Bob doesn't have to build any. Or if Jake builds 5, Bob will have to build 5 so that altogether they have 10. Okay, so let's represent this situation with a table, and then we're going to graph it and decide whether or not it's proportional. Okay. If you want to be precise on your graph, it's or your table, I'm going 13 spaces.
Wait, why 13? Why not?
Very true.
1, 6, 7, 8, 13. It does not need to be perfect, but for those of you that really like your notes to look like amazing and precise, that's who I'm telling you. And if you're not one of those people, you don't even need to do this fancy table. You can just do a little T-chart and fill it in. Okay. So we're going to have the number of birdhouses that Jake builds is going to be our first entry in our table, Jake. And then the number of birdhouses that Bob builds will be the second. Okay. Now I know we already talked about it, but let's go through this. If Jake builds 10 birdhouses, Bob doesn't have to build any. If Jake builds 9 birdhouses, that means Bob will have to build 1.
No, we're just gonna do 8, 7.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Okay, you getting the pattern? All right, go ahead and fill in your table, and then we'll graph it. Okay. So now we're going to graph it. I'm going to keep the scale at 1. So my x-axis and my y-axis should be at least 10 spaces. It can be more than 10 spaces, but at least 10 is good. In fact, I think mine's going to be a lot more than 10 spaces. I think it went a little crazy here. So we have our x-axis, our y-axis. Remember, when we're using a table, the first entry in the table is your x, and the second is your y. So that means this is going to be Jake's birdhouses down here. So the number of birdhouses that Jake builds. So Jake's birdhouses. Okay, and then Bob is our Y, so we'll do Bob over here. So this is Bob's birdhouses. Okay, and then, like I said, we're going to do a scale of 1 here because we can. So this will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then I'll do the same thing along the y-axis. Okay. I'll give you a second to make sure yours is all set up, and then we'll talk about it. All right. So when we're graphing here, we'll go to that first set. This is basically an ordered pair here. So 10, 0. So we're going to put a point at 10, 0. Then our next point, Jake builds 9, Bob builds 1. So Jake is 9, Bob is 1. And then 8 and 2, 7 and 3. You can kind of see what's happening here, right? I can see what's happening, and they don't have a clue. All right, no, you guys do have a clue. I'm just quoting Disney. All right. After you put all of your points here, we can connect it to make a nice straight line. Okay. Does this represent a proportional relationship? Why? Yes, it doesn't start at the origin. It does not start at 0, 0. And you could also, I mean, you could tell easily just from the table before you even graphed it. Because if we found the ratios here, this ratio would be 0. This would be 1/9, 1/4, 3/7, 2/3. So the ratios are all over the map. They are not at all equal, okay? And the graph is a quick check too, because you can visually see it. You don't have to do any math to say that doesn't cross at 0, 0, so it's not proportional, okay? So let's answer in a complete sentence. We can say this does not represent a proportional relationship because it does not cross the point 0, 0. All right. So I'm going to pass out your homework. And like I said, I printed it out for you. I want you to see if you can figure out the table for that first one. But I imagine some of you might need some help. So if you can't figure it out, stew on it for a minute or two, and then I'll go over it on board. Okay? I'll get you started on board. Yes. right, there's the table of contents for you.